On Monday, an interagency operation took place at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, where Sean Diddy Combs is being held. This action, coordinated by multiple federal agencies, was reportedly launched to address safety concerns within the jail, which has faced criticism for poor conditions, including violence and inadequate security measures. Authorities aim to enhance the security environment, with the operation bringing in teams to ensure federal standards and improve inmate safety. Specific outcomes from the operation have not been disclosed yet. The Metropolitan Detention Center, MDC, in Brooklyn is a federal facility, not a private jail. It is run by the Federal Bureau of Prisons, BOP, and primarily holds federal detainees awaiting trial or sentencing, and some who are serving short sentences. The recent interagency operation at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, where Sean Diddy Combs is currently held, aimed to address serious safety and security issues at the facility. The Bureau of Prisons, in coordination with other federal agencies, led the operation to ensure better conditions and safety for both inmates and staff. This action followed growing concerns about the jail's poor conditions, including reports of violence and several inmate deaths. However, while the operation's primary focus was on the facility's overall security, no specific details have been confirmed regarding concerns for Combs' personal safety within the jail. A typical day at MDC for Combs likely starts at 6 a.m. with a mandatory wake-up and a bed inspection by 7:30 a.m. He would be subject to frequent inmate head counts, during which he must be standing by his bunk, and has limited access to basic activities like exercise and social calls due to frequent. Access to recreation areas is minimal, as the facility operates under strict schedules to manage security risks. MDC Brooklyn has faced numerous challenges, including overcrowding, violence, and staffing shortage. Several staff members have been charged with corruption, leading to drug and contraband smuggling inside. Additionally, ongoing maintenance issues have caused deteriorating living conditions, with incidents like a week-long power outage in 2019 that left inmates in the cold. Due to these extreme conditions, some federal judges have opted against sending individuals to MDC, allowing certain detainees to await trial or sentencing in home confinement instead. Limited interaction due to his high-profile status. He remains under 23-hour lockdown in the Special Housing Unit, which offers added security but limits his movement and privacy. His meals are basic, reportedly including options like Swedish meatballs or a vegetarian burger. Many detainees have commented on the poor quality of food and overcrowded conditions, with complaints about issues such as food containing maggots, though MDC staff claim these issues have been addressed by quality checks. At MDC, detainees like Combs receive restricted recreational time, usually an hour outside their cells, and limited shower access, only 3 times a week. His lawyers have argued that these conditions may hinder his ability to effectively prepare for his defense, as MDC's frequent lockdowns and staffing shortages disrupt access to legal counsel and hamper inmate communication. Combs' team is pursuing alternative detention arrangements, citing the notorious conditions and lack of resources at MDC. The facility has faced allegations of corruption, violence, and dangerous conditions for years. And some judges even avoid sending detainees there due to its problematic environment. His limited out-of-cell time is generally restricted to 1 hour per day, primarily for other individual activities. Interaction with other inmates is minimal, if at all, due to his placement in solitary, which is typical for high-profile detainees as a precaution to ensure safety and security. MDC Brooklyn is notorious for overcrowding, staff shortages, and difficult conditions that even led some judges to delay sentencing or reassign defendants to home confinement. Issues such as frequent lockdowns, violence among inmates, and limited access to phone calls, visits, and recreational activities contribute to a highly restricted and isolating environment. While efforts have been made to improve the jail's infrastructure, these challenges continue to affect the day-to-day lives of detainees like Combs.
The Metropolitan Detention Center, Brooklyn MDC Brooklyn, is a United States federal administrative detention facility in the Sunset Park neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York City. It holds male and female prisoners of all security levels. It is operated by the Federal Bureau of Prisons, a division of the United States Department of Justice. Most prisoners held at MDC Brooklyn have pending cases in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of New York. MDC Brooklyn also holds prisoners serving brief sentences.
Sean Diddy Combs' legal team is seeking to transfer him from Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center, MDC, to a facility in Essex County, New Jersey. They argue that the conditions at MDC are unsuitable, citing issues like overcrowding, violence, and inadequate staffing, which make it challenging for Combs to prepare for his case. MDC Brooklyn has faced criticism for years due to reports of substandard living conditions and safety concerns.
In 2019, one former warden, Cameron Lindsay, said that the MDC was one of the most troubled, if not the most troubled facility in the Bureau of Prisons.
Combs is currently held in a special housing unit with limited interaction, confined to his cell for up to 23 hours daily, a situation common for high-profile detainees to ensure safety and security. However, the transfer request might face obstacles as the Bureau of Prisons has recently increased staff at MDC to address the facility's chronic issues, and they have not yet approved a transfer to New Jersey.
MDC Brooklyn occupies land that was originally part of Bush Terminal, now Industry City, a historic intermodal shipping, warehousing, and manufacturing complex. 3. The Federal Bureau of Prisons initially proposed converting 2 buildings at Industry City into a federal jail in 1988, due to overcrowding at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, New York. 4. There was large opposition from members of the local community, who feared that traffic congestion in the area would rise. 5. Critics feared that the facility, with its staff, inmates, visitors, and supply deliveries, would overburden neighborhood traffic and water and sewer systems. 6. 7. To make room for MDC Brooklyn, one of the original Bush Terminal loft buildings, Federal Building No. 1, formerly occupied by the United States Coast Guard, was demolished in a controlled explosion in August 1993. 8. MDC Brooklyn opened in the early 1990s. It was built to hold 1,000 inmates awaiting arraignment or trial at the federal court in the Eastern District of New York. 9. By 2019, according to the New York Times, it held 1,600 inmates. 10. In 1999, a second facility was opened adjacent to the original complex to house inmates who have already been sentenced and are awaiting transfer to a permanent facility. This brought the total number of inmates to close to 3,000 and made MDC Brooklyn the largest detention center in the United States. In June 2015, a lawsuit filed in 2002 against high-ranking officials of George W. Bush's presidential administration, including former Attorney General John Ashcroft and former FBI Director Robert S. Mueller III, brought by 8, mostly Muslim immigrant detainees, was allowed to go forward by a 3-judge federal panel. It alleged that the plaintiffs were subject to chronic arbitrary abuses including beatings, strip searches and solitary confinement. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals decision included one dissent. 11. In September 2024, it was announced that federal defendants entering the prison system after sentencing will no longer be sent to MDC Brooklyn. This decision is possibly related to a previous ruling by a federal court judge who threatened to vacate a man's sentence if he was sent to MDC Brooklyn due to the dangerous, barbaric conditions of the jail. 12. The same month, renowned musician and record producer Sean Diddy Combs was incarcerated at the prison's special housing unit. On June 29, 2009, Ronald Atkinson, 624-16054, an inmate at MDC Brooklyn who had been arrested in connection with 6 bank robberies 12 days earlier, committed an allegedly unprovoked assault on a correctional officer, punching him in the head multiple times until he was restrained by correctional officers. As a result of the assault, the officer, whom the Bureau of Prisons did not identify, suffered serious injuries, including a broken nose, broken facial bones, a fractured eye socket, a laceration requiring stitches and 2 slip discs in his neck. An 18-year veteran of the Bureau of Prisons, the officer was forced to take a medical retirement as a result of his injuries. 14. Atkinson was subsequently sentenced to 7 years in federal prison for the bank robberies. On July 19, 2013, he was sentenced to an additional 12 years in prison in connection with the assault. Atkinson is scheduled for release in 2032. 15. Atkinson is currently housed at USP Coleman I in Sumter County, Florida. On February 5, 2013, New York media outlets reported that Nancy Gonzalez, a former federal correction officer, had engaged in a sexual relationship with Ronell Wilson, an inmate at MDC Brooklyn, and that Gonzalez was carrying Wilson's child. Wilson, who was convicted and sentenced to death in 2007 for the 2003 murders of NYPD detectives Rodney Andrews and James Nemorin, was awaiting a resentencing hearing in Brooklyn federal court after his original death sentence was overturned in 2010, when he began a relationship with Gonzalez. Gonzalez was terminated and arraigned in federal court on charges of sexual abuse of a person in custody, because an inmate cannot legally consent to sex. 1718, Wilson was subsequently transferred to the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan. Gonzalez pleaded guilty to unlawful sexual abuse of a ward on July 3, 2013. 19 Gonzalez was sentenced to a year and a day by federal Judge Brian Cogan on February 9, 2014. Cogan remarked, "Gonzalez has severe emotional dysfunction." Wilson was sentenced to death again on September 10, 2013. During the hearing, U.S. District Court Judge Nicholas Garofis called for a formal investigation by the Justice Department's Inspector General into the management of MDC Brooklyn, where, he said, Mr. Wilson was permitted to treat the MDC as his own private fiefdom. In January and February 2019, over 1,600 inmates were kept with little to no heat and power for a week during the January 2019 North American cold wave. Numerous inmates reported ill health and were seen banging on windows for help. Activists and some New York officials became involved in seeking to improve conditions. 22-23, the incident started on the weekend of January 26 to 27 with a power outage. A problematic electrical panel was repaired but caught fire the next day. 23 power was restored on the evening of February 3, 24, and the Department of Justice planned to investigate the incident. 25-26 inmates, family members and lawyers have said that those inmates involved in protesting these harsh conditions through nonviolent disobedience and hunger strikes have faced draconian reprisals from jail staff, including being pepper sprayed, subjected to solitary confinement and having toilets shut off. According to a report in The Intercept. On all three of those housing units where men collectively refused food, jail staff shut off the valves to the toilets in all of the cells, according to accounts relayed to lawyers. Confined to their cells on lockdown, deprived of light, the men on these units now found themselves shivering on their bunks with their heads inches from toilet bowls nearly overflowing with festering feces.
The interagency crackdown at Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center, MDC, on Monday, where Sean Diddy Combs is being held, was driven by ongoing concerns over the facility's challenging conditions. Federal agencies, including the Department of Justice and the Bureau of Prisons, coordinated this operation to address the jail's long-standing issues with violence, poor infrastructure, and safety lapses. While the operation wasn't specifically due to Combs' presence, his high-profile status has drawn increased public scrutiny to MDC's severe conditions, where he awaits trial amidst restrictive settings and allegations against him. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more content, and leave a comment below. See you next time.